Welcome to Africo Tales. In the gleaming heart of Lagos, a city that pulsed with the energy of 1,000 unfulfilled dreams and 1,000,000 whispered prayers, there lived a man whose life seemed to be carved from gold. Deji Olaniyan, impeccably suited, a titan of industry whose name echoed in mahogany boardrooms and across the polished marble floors of the city's highest financial towers, had it all. A penthouse apartment that kissed the clouds, a garage that housed German engineering marvels, and a wife, Amarachi, whose beauty was as serene and captivating as a fresh morning dew on an egret's feather. Yet beneath the veneer of this opulent existence, a silent disquiet stirred in Deji's soul, a hunger for something untamed, something that luxury could not buy. His perfect life, it seemed, was a gilded cage, and the city's neon-lit avenues, teeming with untold stories, beckoned him with an irresistible, dangerous promise. Deji Olaniyan often found himself staring out from his penthouse balcony, the sprawling tapestry of Lagos unfurling beneath him like a restless, glittering beast. The city, a symphony of incessant horns, distant music, and the pervasive hum of generators, was his kingdom. Yet he felt increasingly like a prisoner within its golden walls. Beside him, in their meticulously curated apartment, Amarachi moved, with the grace of a gazelle, orchestrating their home with an effortless elegance that bespoke generations of refinement. She was the epitome of a Lagos society wife, beautiful, educated, connected, and fiercely loyal. Their marriage, a union blessed by both families and cemented by years of shared dreams, was, to all outward appearances, flawless. They dined at the finest restaurants, attended exclusive soirees, and were the envy of their peers. But beneath the surface, a subtle chill had begun to creep into their interactions, a silence heavier than any spoken word. Amarachi, with her exquisite taste and quiet strength, had always been Deji's anchor. She was the calm in his storm, the earth beneath, his striving ambition. Yet, lately, her gentle presence felt more like a constraint. He found himself restless during their quiet evenings, the soft glow of their expensive lamps doing little to illuminate the growing void within him. Their conversations, once vibrant and filled with shared laughter, had dwindled to polite inquiries and logistical discussions. The spark, that vibrant fire that had once consumed them, seemed to have been replaced by a comfortable, predictable warmth that for Deji was beginning to feel stifling. He craved the unexpected, the raw energy that he felt pulsed in the city's less refined corners, a yearning he dared not voice, especially not to Amarachi, whose quiet dignity would be shattered by such a confession. He knew deep down that a river without banks floods the village, and his desires were threatening to overflow the boundaries of his carefully constructed life. One humid Lagos evening, the city lights shimmering like fallen stars, Deji's usual route home took an unexpected detour. A particularly frustrating business deal had collapsed, leaving him raw and seeking an escape from the sterile confines of his usual haunts. He found himself drawn to the pulsing heart of the island's entertainment district, a kaleidoscope of blaring music, street food vendors, and a vibrant energy that felt miles away from his penthouse serenity. As he navigated his sleek SUV through the throng of people, his eyes, usually trained on financial reports, caught a flash of defiant color. It was her, standing under the erratic flicker of a neon sign that advertised cold drinks and good vibes. She was a vision of untamed confidence. Her name, he would later learn, was Temi. She wasn't dressed in the muted silks and designer labels that adorned Amarachi. Instead, she wore a tailored Ankara jumpsuit that hugged her curves, a cascade of braids framing a face alive with sharp wit and an undeniable allure. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, met his for a fleeting moment, a spark passing between them that felt both dangerous and exhilarating. She wasn't just beautiful. She exuded a raw, unapologetic energy, street smartness that was utterly captivating. She was laughing with a group of friends, her laughter a clear, melodious sound that cut through the city's din, and as he watched her haggle playfully with a roadside vendor, Deji felt an unfamiliar tremor in his chest. This was the excitement. He had unconsciously craved the unfiltered thrill that his luxurious life had denied him. He knew with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified him that his world was about to shift on its axis. He made a mental note, a dangerous seed planted in his heart, to find a reason, any reason, to introduce himself to this enigmatic woman who embodied the very essence of Lagos's untamed spirit. The encounter with Temi was the crack in Deji's perfectly polished facade. What began as a mere curiosity quickly escalated into a clandestine affair, a shadow life woven into the fabric of his meticulously planned days. He sought her out, first with a fabricated excuse about a new business venture, then with increasingly elaborate lies that he spun for Amarachi, for his colleagues, and even for himself. Their meetings were discreet, stolen moments in dimly lit lounges, bustling markets where his presence would go unnoticed amidst the teeming humanity, and eventually a small, vibrant apartment on the mainland that became his secret refuge. Temi's world was a stark contrast to Amarachi's. It was raw, immediate, and pulsating with a vitality that Deji found intoxicating. She introduced him to hidden gems, roadside pepper soup joints that served the best spicy broth, underground music spots where the beat vibrated through his bones, and a community of artists and hustlers who lived by a different code, one of resilience and self-reliance. He found himself increasingly drawn to this chaotic, unpredictable life. Temi's quick wit and no-nonsense attitude were a refreshing change from the polite deference he was accustomed to. She challenged him, made him laugh with reckless abandon, and ignited a passion he hadn't known he lacked. Yet the thrill was permanently laced with a bitter tang of guilt. Each lie he told Amarachi, each stolen moment with Temi, chipped away at his conscience. He would return home to his penthouse, the scent of Temi's perfume still clinging to his clothes, and find Amarachi, elegant and unsuspecting, sometimes preparing his favorite fufu and agusi soup, her eyes reflecting unwavering trust. He saw the subtle hints of concern in her gaze, the way she would linger a moment longer when he returned late, the unasked questions that hung heavy in the air. A man who fetches a calabash of oil from the fire should not return with his clothes unstained. Deji knew he was playing a dangerous game, one that threatened to burn his entire life to ashes, but the allure of Temi's world was a fire he found himself unable to extinguish. The delicate balance of Deji's double life, like a poorly built house of cards, was destined to collapse. The weight of his deceit grew unbearable, amplified by Temi's increasing demands for exclusivity and Amarachi's subtle, yet persistent, inquiries. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, with Temi about his divided loyalties, Deji returned to his penthouse, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He found Amarachi waiting, not with anger, but with a quiet, devastating certainty in her eyes. The air was thick with unspoken truths. She didn't need to ask. His guilt, his restlessness, the fading scent of a foreign perfume on his clothes, it all spoke volumes. It was in that moment, under the cold, silent scrutiny of his wife, that Deji made his shocking, irreversible decision. He confessed, not with remorse, but with a desperate plea for understanding, a selfish desire to be free. The words tumbled out, brutal and unvarnished. He was leaving. He was leaving their perfect life, their shared history, their future, for Temi. Amarachi listened, her face a mask of shock, then pain, then a chilling anger that Deji had never witnessed. Her response was not the expected wailing or histrionics, but a quiet, searing condemnation that cut him deeper than any shout. "Deji," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "you seek excitement where roots should be. A tree that abandons its soil will wither." The news spread like wildfire through their social circles, a scandal whispered over expensive cocktails and hushed telephone calls. Business associates looked at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. His family, pillars of tradition, expressed their profound disappointment, seeing his actions as a betrayal not just of Amarachi, but of their collective honor. The gilded cage had shattered, but Deji, blinded by his newfound freedom, believed he was finally flying. The truth, however, was that he was merely falling. Deji plunged headfirst into Temi's world, leaving behind the hushed opulence of his penthouse for the vibrant, crowded apartment she shared with a rotating cast of friends and clients. The initial days were a heady mix of exhilaration and novelty. He felt reborn, shed of the weighty expectations that had defined his existence. Temi's infectious energy was a constant high. They explored the city's hidden corners, ate street food from makeshift stalls, and danced to pulsating beats in crowded clubs until dawn. He found himself laughing more freely, feeling more alive than he had in years. This was the raw, authentic life he had craved, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection he had abandoned. He convinced himself that he had made the right choice, that happiness lay not in wealth and status, but in this untamed, exhilarating freedom. The whispers of his departure, the disapproving stares from his former colleagues, seemed a small price to pay for such liberation. However, the honeymoon period quickly began to wane, replaced by the harsh realities of Temi's life. The spacious quiet of his former home was replaced by constant noise and activity. The seamless efficiency of his previous domestic arrangements gave way to a chaotic rhythm where meals were often impromptu and personal space was a luxury. Temi's hustle, which had initially charmed him with its ingenuity, revealed its taxing nature. He saw the toll it took on her, the constant vigilance and shrewdness required to navigate her world. The glamour of her street-smart confidence began to fray at the edges, revealing anxieties about unpaid bills, unreliable clients, and the relentless grind of survival. The easy camaraderie he had admired among her friends sometimes tipped into opportunistic rivalries. Deji, accustomed to the predictable stability of wealth, found himself increasingly adrift in this unpredictable current. He began to understand that freedom, untamed and unburdened by responsibility, could also be a lonely and demanding mistress. The vibrant tapestry he had admired from afar now felt like a tangled, sometimes suffocating web. While Deji embraced his new, tumultuous life, Amarachi retreated into a grief that was both public and intensely private. Her family, pillars of the community, rallied around her. Her mother, a woman of formidable strength and deep faith, held her close, whispering ancient proverbs of resilience. "The kola nut," she would say, "though bitter, holds the wisdom of our elders." Amarachi found solace not in outward revenge, but in a quiet resolve. She moved back into her ancestral compound, a sprawling family home brimming with warmth, shared meals, and the constant presence of cousins, aunts, and uncles. The familiar sense of jollof rice simmering on the stove, the rhythmic pounding of fufu, and the harmonious chatter comforted her wounded spirit. Yet, in the quiet of the night, questions plagued her mind, and a deep sense of betrayal gnawed at her heart. The elders of the compound, with their weathered faces and knowing eyes, watched Amarachi with a combination of sympathy and concern. They shared stories, not of vengeance, but of endurance. They spoke of Agba, wisdom that comes from experience and suffering. One evening, during a traditional family gathering, the oldest elder, Baba Segun, a man whose words carried the weight of generations, approached Amarachi. He spoke of ancestral spirits, of the delicate balance of destiny and choice. "Child," he rasped, his eyes far away, "the path a man chooses for himself, even if paved with false gold, will eventually lead him back to the truth. The ancestors watch. They do not forget the vows made under the watchful eyes of the gods." Amarachi felt a chill run down her spine. His words were not a threat, but a prophecy, a subtle warning that the consequences of Deji's choices were not merely earthly, but spiritual, echoing through the very fabric of their bloodline. A spiritual sign, an omen, suggested that the path Deji had chosen was not blessed, and that a reckoning, rooted in ancient traditions and karmic law, was drawing near. As weeks stretched into months, the vibrant novelty of Temi's world began to wear thin for Deji, revealing uncomfortable truths. The laughter felt a little less genuine, the freedom a little more burdened. He started noticing the subtle inconsistencies, the evasiveness in Temi's stories about her past, the way her eyes would dart away when he pressed for details about her hustle. He remembered Amarachi's steadfast honesty, her quiet integrity, and a pang of regret, sharp and unwelcome, pierced his heart. The communal living, once a symbol of his liberation, now felt like an intrusion. His personal space, his need for quiet reflection, was constantly encroached upon. The initial exhilaration of street food and vibrant music was slowly replaced by a yearning for the familiar comforts of his old life, the ordered quiet of his home, Amarachi's perfectly cooked jollof rice, the predictability of his routines. His finances, once limitless, were also taking a hit. Temi's lifestyle, though outwardly simple, required a constant flow of cash for daily expenses, for her friends, for her investments. Deji found himself dipping into reserves he rarely touched, making compromises he never anticipated. His business, once thriving under his meticulous attention, suffered from his distraction. Deals faltered, partners grew wary, and his reputation, once unassailable, became tarnished with whispers of his controversial personal life. He saw the cold, calculating glint in the eyes of some of Temi's associates, a shrewdness that made him uneasy. He began to question Temi's motives, sensing a transactional edge to their relationship that he had dismissed as her street-smart charm. Was her affection true, or was it merely a reflection of his wealth? The answer, he feared, was becoming painfully clear. A man who judges a book by its cover often misses the best stories, and Deji was beginning to realize he had misread Temi's narrative entirely. The seeds of doubt blossomed into a bitter harvest as Deji's world began to truly crumble. His business, once his pride and joy, became a source of incessant problems. Key clients, wary of his scandal-ridden personal life, began to pull out, citing reputational risks. His carefully built empire, a testament to years of tireless work, was crumbling under the weight of his impulsive choices. The financial strain intensified, forcing him to make increasingly desperate decisions. Temi, once his vibrant muse, now seemed to view him primarily as a source of funds. Her charm, once so captivating, now felt manipulative, and her demands grew bolder, more insistent. The raw energy he had admired now often manifested as volatile temper, especially when his ability to provide faltered. The ultimate betrayal, however, came from an unexpected quarter. One evening, returning to Temi's apartment, he overheard a hushed conversation. Temi, on the phone, spoke in a low, conspiratorial tone about a big score, a fool who had fallen for her charms, and how she was milking him dry. The chilling realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. She was talking about him. But the revelation didn't stop there. As he stood, frozen, listening, he heard a name that sent a jolt of icy horror through him. The name of a former business rival, a man who had long sought to undermine Deji's ventures. Temi was not just exploiting him, she was colluding with his enemy, feeding him classified information about his company, effectively orchestrating his downfall from within. The raw energy he had so admired was not just street smarts, it was calculated malice. The woman he had abandoned his life for had been a viper in disguise, a tool in a larger scheme, and he, Deji Olaniyan, the shrewd businessman, had been played for a fool. The taste of betrayal was a poison in his mouth, far more potent than any luxury he had ever abandoned. The revelation of Temi's betrayal and her collusion with his rival pushed Deji to the brink. His world, once of glittering skyscrapers and flawless suits, was now reduced to the grimy realities of Temi's apartment, a place that felt less like a home and more like a prison. Confrontation was inevitable. He waited until she returned, her eyes bright with a false cheer that now grated on his nerves. "Who is Kunle?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and profound hurt, dropping the name of his rival. Temi's face, usually so composed, fractured instantly. The mask of charm fell, revealing a raw, desperate fear. She tried to deny it, to deflect, but Deji, armed with overheard fragments and a newfound clarity, pressed on. The dam broke. In a torrent of tears and desperate apologies, Temi confessed. It was a story of poverty, desperation, and a past rife with exploitation. Kunle, his rival, had approached her months before she even met Deji, offering a lifeline in exchange for information. He had promised her a better life, financial security, and a way out of the streets if she helped him sabotage Deji. "He promised to set me up, Deji, a real business, a chance to escape." She wept, her voice laced with genuine regret, mixed with a lingering bitterness. She spoke of the struggle of women in a patriarchal society where opportunities were scarce and survival often meant making impossible choices. She had seen Deji as a means to an end, a part of the larger scheme, but admitted in a flash of honesty that she had grown to genuinely care for him, even as she betrayed him. It was a dramatic confession, a raw unraveling of her carefully constructed facade. A flashback flickered in Deji's mind, a seemingly innocuous meeting between Temi and Kunle at a bustling market, a secret handshake he had dismissed as a casual encounter. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, painting a devastating picture of his own blindness and her calculated cruelty, born of a desperate desire for survival. Deji stood amidst the wreckage of his choices, his wealth gone, his reputation shattered, and his heart bleeding from the deepest cut of all. He had sought excitement and found ruin. Broken and utterly alone, Deji was forced to confront the wreckage of his life. Temi, exposed and desperate, vanished, leaving him with nothing but the ruins of his former glory and the crushing weight of his mistakes. He had nowhere to go. Humiliation prevented him from returning to his family, and his pride kept him from seeking help from his former associates. He wandered the city, a shadow of the man he once was, the glitter of Lagos now a mocking reminder of what he had lost. It was in his darkest hour, starved and despairing, that he stumbled upon the familiar scent of grilled plantains and spicy stew, leading him to a small, unassuming buka, a local eatery, run by a distant cousin he had long since forgotten. Word of his plight had inevitably reached his family. His cousin, without judgment, offered him food and a place to rest. Slowly, painstakingly, Deji began the arduous journey of seeking forgiveness. His first call was to his mother, whose initial silence was more devastating than any rebuke. Eventually, her voice, filled with both sorrow and a flicker of hope, told him, "A child who kneels before his mother can always find the path home." He returned to his ancestral compound, not in triumph, but in abject humility. The communal harmony he had long taken for granted now became his lifeline. He ate simple meals with his family, listened to the elders' counsel, and, with deepest shame, sought out Amarachi. She met him, not with bitterness, but with a quiet, dignified resolve. There was no anger, only a profound sense of loss. He confessed everything, his voice choked with genuine remorse, detailing Temi's betrayal and his own foolishness. Amarachi, having found her own strength in her family and self-discovery, listened, her eyes reflecting a deep wisdom. Her journey of healing had not led to vengeance, but to an understanding that true peace came from within. The path to redemption, Deji realized, was not about regaining what he had lost, but about rebuilding himself with honesty, humility, and the enduring values of his heritage. He knew that the chameleon does not change its spots without reason. His change had to be profound and lasting. Deji's redemption was not a swift, magical restoration of his old life, but a slow, arduous climb towards integrity and self-awareness. He started anew, not in the gleaming towers, but in a small office, beginning with modest ventures, painstakingly rebuilding his reputation through honest hard work and unwavering commitment. His family, initially wary, watched his transformation. With cautious optimism, he immersed himself in communal life, contributing to village initiatives, sharing wisdom gained from bitter experience. He learned the value of patience, the strength found in humility, and the profound beauty of communal harmony that he had once so carelessly discarded. He understood that true wealth lay not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the richness of relationships and the strength of character. Amarachi, too, had found her own form of resolution. She had blossomed, her quiet strength now radiating with newfound confidence. She had pursued her own entrepreneurial dreams, creating a thriving business that celebrated African textiles and artistry, finding purpose and independence. While the wound of Deji's betrayal had healed, the scar remained, a reminder of lessons learned. Their paths would not intertwine romantically again, but a deep, respectful friendship, born of shared history and mutual growth, began to form. They shared parenting advice for a young orphan cousin they both unofficially fostered, laughed over family stories, and offered each other quiet counsel. Deji, humbled and wise, understood that forgiveness was a gift Amarachi chose to give, not an entitlement he had earned. He had abandoned his wife for a fleeting passion, only to discover that true passion resided in integrity, loyalty, and the unwavering strength of enduring African values, the city of Lagos, with its unending chaos and vibrant life, continued its dance, but Deji now moved through it with a settled peace, a man who had strayed from the river, tumbled through the rapids, and finally found his way back to its steady, life-giving flow, carrying the wisdom of a hard-learned truth. A well-cooked yam does not need a spoon to break it. Truth needs no elaborate explanation. His life, once a tragedy of ambition, became a testament to the enduring power of honesty, wisdom, and the redemptive spirit of African tradition. If you enjoyed the story, then like, subscribe, and share this story with your loved ones. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from.